On the 4th of November, 1970, a woman walked into the social services offices of Temple City, California, with a small girl beside her. One of the social workers noticed immediately that something was wrong. The girl walked with an extremely strange gait. She drooled constantly. She wore a diaper. She appeared to have the development of a child of around 6 or 7 years old. She seemed entirely incapable of making a sound, but she was not 6 years old. She was 13, and she was not disabled. She was not autistic. She was not deaf. She was the victim of one of the most horrific child abuse cases in recorded human history. Her name was not Genie. That was the pseudonym given to her by social workers to keep her real identity out of the press, but the name fits in a way that nobody intended. A genie confined to a lamp, bottled up for years, a symbol of complete and total imprisonment. That was exactly what had been done to her. To understand what happened to Genie, you have to understand her father. Clark Wiley was a controlling, paranoid, and violent man. He was obsessively protective of his wife Irene, in the way that abusers always frame control as protection. He dictated where she went, who she spoke to, what she could do. The house was kept deliberately silent at all times. Hushed voices. The radio turned almost completely off. Clark had an intense intolerance for noise. When their first child was born, a baby girl, her crying enraged him. She was placed in an unheated garage at just 2 months old. She caught pneumonia. She died. A second child died shortly after birth from a blood disorder. Their third child was a boy named John. He survived, just barely. Then, in April of 1957, Genie was born. Her first 20 months of life were unremarkable by comparison to what came next. Neglected, but alive, developing, slowly but developing. Then in December of 1958, Clark's mother was struck and killed by a drunk driver, and something in Clark Wiley broke completely. He became convinced that the outside world was dangerous, that he needed to protect his family from it, and the way he chose to act on that conviction was to imprison his own daughter. Clark moved the family into his dead mother's house. He left her bedroom untouched as a shrine. He confined Genie to the other bedroom permanently. She was not yet 2 years old. The room had 3 pieces of furniture, a cupboard, a cot, and a potty chair. Clark built a special harness that strapped Genie naked to that potty chair during the day. It was designed to prevent her from moving her arms or legs. At night, she was placed into the cot, which had wire mesh over the sides and top to keep her inside. A sleeping bag inside it could be pulled so tightly shut that her arms were pinned to her sides. The walls were bare. The curtains were always drawn. The door was always closed. Irene was discouraged from interacting with her daughter. The only consistent human contact Genie had was when Clark beat her for making noise. He kept a large wooden stick in the corner of the room specifically for that purpose. If she was fed at all, it was done as quickly as possible to limit time spent near her. Baby food, soggy cereal, spooned into her mouth fast. If she choked or spat any of it out, it was rubbed into her face. This is how Genie lived, every day, for 11 years, strapped to a potty chair, staring at the same bare walls, in near total silence, in complete isolation. Think about everything you experienced between the ages of 2 and 13. Every conversation, every friendship, every meal, every word you learned, every laugh, every moment of being held. Genie had none of it, not one single moment. During this time, Irene had gone almost completely blind. Even if she had wanted to intervene, she was largely helpless. It was not until October of 1970 that she finally reached a breaking point. During a violent argument with Clark, she threatened to leave unless he allowed her to call her own parents. He relented. That same day, while he was out of the house, Irene freed Genie from her restraints for the first time. 3 weeks later, they walked into those social services offices. The medical examination that followed was devastating. Genie was severely malnourished. She weighed just 59 pounds and stood only 54 inches tall at 13 years old. Her hips were deformed. She was completely incontinent. She could not stand fully upright. She could not straighten her arms or legs. She could barely walk, shuffling from side to side in what would later be called her bunny walk. A posture that looked permanently like she was sitting, because her body had been physically shaped by years of being strapped into that chair. She could not chew solid food. She had never learned how. She did not cry when she was in pain. She did not laugh when she was happy. She had been conditioned into total silence so completely that she had almost no vocalization left at all. Clark Wiley was scheduled to appear in court 1 month after Genie was taken into care. He never appeared. On the morning of the court date, he shot himself dead. A note was found on his body. It read, "The world will never understand." What followed for Genie was both remarkable and deeply complicated, because Genie was unlike any case science had ever encountered. Researchers from across the fields of linguistics, neurology, and psychology fought for access to her. She became known in academic circles as the forbidden experiment, because what her parents had done had created the one situation that no ethical scientist could ever deliberately engineer: a human being raised in complete isolation past the critical period for language acquisition. Over the following years, Genie began to develop. Slowly, painfully, she started pointing at objects and demanding their names. She began to imitate words. By 1971, she could use single words. A year later, she was putting two words together.
Father is not living.
A year after that, short phrases. Father hit big stick. Father hit Genie big stick. Father take piece wood. Hit. Cry. But she would never fully acquire language. According to linguist Eric Lenneberg, natural language acquisition occurs during a critical period that begins at age 2 and ends at puberty. Exactly the years Genie had spent strapped to that chair. No matter how hard the researchers worked, that window had closed permanently. Her past revealed itself in other ways. She hoarded plastic containers obsessively, Tupperware, buckets, anything she could find. Her mother later confirmed that the only toy Genie had ever been given in that room was an empty cottage cheese container. She was deathly afraid of dogs, terrified to the point of running into traffic to avoid one on the street. They eventually learned why. Clark had stood outside her bedroom door and growled like a dog to keep her quiet. Some reports suggest he grew his fingernails extra long so he could scratch her face. Genie was making progress. Slow, painful, but real progress, until she turned 18. She was returned to her mother, but Irene Wiley found Genie's behavior too difficult to manage and handed her back to the state. This time, the foster homes were different. Strict, cold. Reports emerged of verbal and physical abuse in the care system, and Genie began to shut down. Everything she had built over 5 years started to collapse. The last known photograph of her was taken at her 27th birthday party. A researcher who had known her for years looked at the image and said simply, "I was there, and then I saw her again when she was 29, and she still looked miserable. She looked to me like a chronically institutionalized person. She was this isolated person, incarcerated for all those years, and then she emerged and lived in a more reasonable world for a while, and then the door was shut, and she withdrew again." He pointed to the photograph and said, "This is soul sickness." The last confirmed report on Genie's condition came from a Guardian article in 2011. It stated that she remained in state care. Authorities refused to answer any questions about her. All information relating to her was deemed confidential. She would be in her late 60s today. In 1977, 2 years after being returned to the care system, Genie drew a picture. She dictated the labels herself: a mother, a baby, a hand reaching out. Underneath, in her own words, "I miss Mama." Whether that was a happy memory or a wish for a childhood that never existed, only Genie knows.